One Nation FM.
Okay, you've been aware we've been talking to Sentio all throughout the month of Ramadan. Let's find out more about the organization, about this company called Sentio, right? So with me is Imtiaz Suliman, who's the director and portfolio manager at Sentio Capital Management. Imtiaz, as always, good morning. Salam alaikum.
Salam, Ashraf.
Imtiaz, good morning. Salam alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Can
Thank
you
you.
hear me?
Now we're almost towards the end of Ramadan. We had this conversation at the beginning. I know that, but obviously not everybody listens to everything. So let's start at the beginning. Tell me about Sentio and how it all started.
Yeah, sure. As we've been chatting throughout Ramadan, Sentio started in 2007 by Mohammed Mayet and Rayhan Joseph. And effectively, what they wanted to create was a South African black-owned champion asset manager. And they brought these two disciplines of quantitative investing combined with fundamental investing to build out the asset manager. And since then, it's been a journey that has been one that has been very rewarding. We're now a company of 20 people and effectively trying to build a South African champion that is black owned, majority black owned, and is advancing transformation in the investment industry, as well as providing clients with superior risk adjusted returns.
Okay. I take it you were not there at ground zero. I'm not too sure whether you were there when it started, but I mean, you know enough about what were the difficulties at that time. Because I mean, even an established, investment broker, when you have your own business as opposed to marketing somebody else's, it's a different ballgame. What were the challenges in the early days?
Yeah, when you started out and you come from the big houses, so the two co-founders came from Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Rayhan came from RMB Asset Management. I was also at RMB Asset Management. You start from the ground up again. It doesn't matter that you came from these big houses that have big names and you had this experience. You have to prove your worth. And when you're starting a business, and especially in the investment industry, clients always want to see how you perform. And, that period can vary. Some clients want to see a track record of 3 to 5 years. And this is time. This is time that can't be replicated. You have to do the hard work, invest in this time, produce the results. And once you've built up the track record, then clients start getting comfortable and investing with you. When Sentio was started in 2007, this was on the eve of the global financial crisis in 2008. We had this massive crisis, the housing bubble in the US. The world went into a recession. So it was a very difficult time for markets. And Sentio really proved their worth throughout that period by providing returns that were better than the market. And then since then, the company has branched out into different products and catering to a wider audience. And two funds that are very relevant, for our discussion are the two Sharia funds, which we can talk a little bit about as well.
Well, yeah, tell me about it. I mean, the various funds or products that you offer.
Yeah, so we've got different products. So we've got hedge funds, we've got long-only funds, we've got balance funds and absolute return funds. Effectively, the difference between all of these products is the risk profile between these products. So an investor who has a long time frame before retirement, they effectively want to take on more risk because it gives you more return over the long term. And if you've got someone who's close to retirement, they want to protect capital, so they'll go into a medium to low risk fund. The two funds that we have in the Sharia space is the Sharia Equity Fund and the Sharia Balance Fund. And the difference between the two is that the Sharia Equity Fund only invests in shares or equities, whilst the Sharia Balance Fund has a combination of equities, Islamic term deposits, sukuks, property, and it has that asset mix, which gives you a much smoother return profile at a lower risk. And this is for someone who wants less volatility. They want to protect more of their capital, and over the long term, just build steady wealth over time.
And the growth of the Sharia-based funds. I mean, how have they grown over the years?
Yeah, so they've grown quite nicely. These funds were started 7 years ago. The combined value of the two funds is around 800 million rand, so quite sizable. And we've seen very good interest across all types of investors, whether it's the retail investor, institutional investors, but also the brokers out there which are very keen, because we run a very differentiated Sharia fund. And if I can give you some of the nuances of the
Yeah.
Sharia market in South Africa, the Sharia market and the Sharia index, just is the JSE Sharia index, is very concentrated towards the resource sector. So resources make up a large portion of the Sharia index in South Africa, and that ranges between 60 and 70%. So when resources are doing well, commodity prices are doing well, Sharia funds typically do well. What we've been doing is that we've been investing in a broader range of shares, which other managers do, but we also use the portfolio construction technique to bring down the exposure towards resources in particular. And it gives you a much more balanced profile. And we look at, not just resources, we look at other factors, for example, the value factor, the growth factor, and these styles and the combination of these styles using the portfolio construction technique that we employ gives us a better risk profile in the fund, and a smoother return profile. So it's not just when resources
Okay.
do well, the Sentio funds are doing well, and when resources are falling, the Sentio funds are falling.
Okay. And then
Effectively,
who would be your clients? I mean, who do you target?
so the clients are a range, across the whole broad society. It's the Sharia funds appeal to both Muslim investors as well as non-Muslim investors, and the reason for that is, Sharia funds are a subset of ESG, environmental social governance, and people who want to invest ethically in a way and want a certain characteristic, and want their funds to follow a particular path in terms of investing, can invest in our funds. So it's open to everyone, across the board. People who want to save for retirement, people who want to save for the Hajj pilgrimage, people who want to just have a general savings and a savings net in general, can use the fund. So it's open to anyone who wants to save and build long-term wealth, would be suited for the funds that we have on
And
offer.
and that tagline, invest for good. I mean, it's yeah. Tell me more about that. I mean, when you say invest for good, what
Yeah.
does that mean?
Yeah, I think it's a very broad catchphrase, but invest for good for us is effectively, we want to invest for good in our people. We want to invest in for good for our clients and invest in good for the society. So if I break that down, invest for good in terms of our people. We've brought people into the business. As I mentioned, we a business of 20 people now, and we've done that very carefully over the number of years by bringing in people that fits the culture of Sentio carefully, but also, treating people well, treating your staff well, making sure that we build a robust business, the South African champion that I spoke about, and then invest for good for the clients. It's all about making sure that when you invest and putting the client's money to work, you're putting it into businesses that are ethically inclined, and also you don't want to have governance issues. For example, there was the blow up of
Mm.
Steinhoff in 2017.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was a governance issue. There were a lot of governance problems in South Africa in terms of the shares that are listed. And what we try and do is we integrate our ESG philosophy with our risk management process to try and make sure that we avoid these effective stock bombs in the market.
Well,
And then,
governance is an important issue. Yeah, I mean, we
yeah,
chatted to Fairuz Mohammed from Sanjat, the chairperson, about not even corporate governance, but just good governance in general. So I think the point is well taken. Let me end by this. I mean, I'm particularly interested in the advancement of 4IR technology, and I see with great interest that your company Sentio has been modeled as this investment technology company. Is that in terms of of the type of places where you invest, or in terms of investment as a tool to provide good value for your clients?
yeah, that's a good question. So what we use, it's a tool that we use, just as people use Excel to build spreadsheets and to do calculations. We use Excel, we use data and machine learning and artificial intelligence as a tool. The world is awash with data, and data is expanding exponentially year after year. And we as investment managers, if we don't take into account and make use of that data, we're going to be at a disadvantage. So to give you a practical example, there's a lot of data that's available freely, and there's proprietary that we use. But if you just look at Google mobility data, it's a very powerful data source that gives you an indication in real time what's happening throughout the economies. You can go into Google, you can pull up charts that gives you consumers' behavior and time spent at the malls, for example, time spent at the airports, time spent at the parks. And this was a very good indication during the COVID crisis. We saw a huge spike of people spending time at homes due to the lockdowns, and workplaces effectively being deserted. And that gave us an indication that the office market is going to be under pressure because workplaces are being underutilized. So we use that data to make investment decisions. And that was a great tool to use.
Okay, well, and that's a great example. Let's leave it at that. Thanks for your time, Imtiaz Suliman. In terms of we're contacting you, I mean, I see the website is pretty straightforward. I've announced it every single day, sentiocapital.com, so sentio-capital.com, but also with an email, info@sentiocapital.com. Otherwise, you are available, I mean, with telephone numbers all on that website, and then also available on LinkedIn as well as in Twitter. So there you are. From an audience point of view, get to Sentio Capital and see and look at investing with them.